All right, what's going on in the National Football League? Let's get to that.
Uh-oh.
It was, and we haven't had a chance to talk since all hell broke loose on Tuesday, because we last did the show together on Monday. Tuesday, the Brian Flores lawsuit, the landmark racial discrimination lawsuit, class action, attacking the Dolphins, the Giants, the Broncos, the NFL generally for a lengthy history of racial bias, allegedly, when it comes to coaches and general managers. Troy Vincent, the NFL's executive VP of football operations, quoted in the lawsuit, and he said this before elsewhere, there is a double standard. The system is broken. So it's not like it's going to take a lot of effort to find evidence that's going to support the idea that, yeah, there's a problem. The numbers obviously make it clear that it's a problem. And what troubled me more than anything else throughout the course of the week as it relates to this, because there's other stuff that troubled me more on some of the NFL's other controversies, because between the racial discrimination claim, the allegation of the $100,000 offer per loss by Stephen Ross, allegedly, and the ongoing Washington football team investigation, it's one of the roughest weeks the NFL's ever had.
Right.
But the thing that disappointed me the most as it relates to the Flores case was their knee-jerk reaction to issue a statement saying that his claims are without merit. That was embarrassing for the NFL.
Get that. Right.
That was embarrassing.
Right.
And what happened was, I was talking to somebody about it, and they didn't know this for sure, but it's like, well, Jeff Pash, the NFL's general counsel, told PR to say this, and nobody bothered to say, why are we saying it's without merit when it just showed up?
Sounds insensitive.
How do we even know if it has any merit?
Sensitive subject. Right.
And then as the week goes on, you start hearing things from the NFL otherwise that would indicate, well, maybe there is some merit.
There is some merit.
Like they're going to investigate the claim that money was offered to Brian Flores to lose games in 2019.
Right.
And a memo that was sent by the commissioner on Saturday, and this was reported by NFL media, what Roger Goodell said, among other things, we've made significant efforts to promote diversity and adopted numerous policies and programs which have produced positive change in many areas. However, we must acknowledge that, particularly with respect to head coaches, the results have been unacceptable. We will reevaluate and examine all policies, guidelines, and initiatives relating to diversity, equity, and inclusion, including as they relate to gender. We understand the concerns expressed by Coach Flores and others this week. While the legal process moves forward, we will not wait to reassess and modify our strategies to ensure that they are consistent with our values and longstanding commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Good luck. Good luck reconciling that with Coach Flores' claims are without merit. And the fact that Roger Goodell would even put that in writing, Chris, and this kind of gets in the weeds a little bit as it relates to the legal process, but this is going to be used against him in the litigation. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a criminal case and a civil case. His words will be used against him. Troy Vincent's words will be used against them. And they realize it's so obvious it doesn't matter. It really is obvious. They're going to fight him in court. They're going to make Brian Flores prove his case. They're going to say that the class action shouldn't be certified. There's all sorts of legal arguments. They're initially going to say the case needs to go to arbitration, which will push a lot of this out of the public eye. But they know there's a problem. Everybody knows there's a problem. So at least they have some semblance of self-awareness to acknowledge there's a problem and they need to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there is a problem. The problem, obviously, we have too many qualified African-American head coaches who don't get the right respect or chances that maybe some of the other, white coaches in the NFL get. There's the issue there. But to me, what the deeper issue is just how to fix it. That's where I don't really know where to go from here. Because, Mike, I don't know, and again, you certainly can push back on me on this comment. I don't look at the NFL. I don't look at the owners, or a lot of cases, people high up in management, and I don't look at any of these people and go, oh, they are a little racist, or there's some racist tendencies. What I do look at more or less is maybe some bias, and the fact that the NFL is just so deep-rooted in its whiteness in so many ways. As we've discussed with, all the coaching, their family members, all the people that are involved in these organizations, these owners who have been around the NFL. Yes, they have always been surrounded by white people. They're comfortable with that. So that's, to me, where things got to change a little bit. And I don't know how you go about changing that, because, again, these guys are going to offer who they want to offer, who they think is qualified. But at the same time, I think because of hey, there's a grandfather, and I knew his father, and I knew his uncle, and I'm comfortable with that because I have more information about the player. There's more of that to back up the white coaches than the black coaches in the NFL. And to me, that's one of the biggest issues, let alone, I don't think some of these African-American coaches are getting the respect they deserve.
You made a lot of good points there, but let's try to separate some of the issues.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's not like these owners are acting like Archie Bunker.
Exactly, that's right.
But at the same time, if you try to say that to a black candidate, and then say, wait a minute. What about everything John Gruden said in those emails?
Yes.
That's the problem.
Yes.
Because every time you see something like that, then you justifiably, if you are one of these black coaches, say, I know how they treat me to my face. What do they say about me when they don't think anyone's listening?
Sure.
What do they write about me when they don't think anyone's reading? How do they really feel about me? And again, we keep coming back to the fact that the proof is in the pudding. The numbers are undeniable. And bias is a stone's throw from the open Archie Bunker attitude.
Sure.
The bias is still there. The belief that, well, we ultimately don't trust a black man to be the leader of this team.
Right.
We're more comfortable, and it's subtle, it's subconscious, but it's baked in. And the fact that there are no black owners bakes it in.
Sure.
And that's the problem. And I think part of it too, and this is something that we talked about a few times last week. The oligarch system doesn't work. And I know it's never going to change, but the idea that you get a really rich and powerful person who can do whatever they want, and if they hit a roadblock, if they step in a pothole, if they blow a tire, they just write a check.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I want. And if someone else tries to tell them to do something they don't want to do, I think sometimes they will just do the opposite, just as a reminder that you don't tell me how to run my business. I earned the money that allowed me to buy this team. I own this team. I'm surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear when I want to hear it. And the oligarch system doesn't work. And that's why I think the NFL should consider allowing teams to become corporate bodies, because if you had a corporation, not like the Green Bay Packers, although the Packers operate like a normal corporation, you can't publicly trade their stock and have any appreciation or anything like that. It's a ruse, but there isn't one person who's in charge who can say, I'm going to do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, and you can't tell me otherwise. And if you had a corporate structure with a board of directors that was made up of a diverse cross-section of the community, and you had layers and levels of governance and committees, you could, and not that corporations are without fault when it comes to these kinds of issues, because they get sued all the time for employment practices that aren't ideal, but at least when it happens, you can hold people accountable, you can investigate. There isn't that one person who is ultimately in charge, who is untouchable and can only be forced out by the rest of the oligarchs. And we see what they're doing with Daniel Snyder. They don't want to start forcing people out because they don't want to get forced out.
Of course.
If they have a loose agreement among themselves that we're not going to force anyone out, then we never have to worry about getting forced out.
They don't want to set precedents like you've talked about before.
But that's the problem. And I think the league office is beside themselves to a certain extent because they know they can't get these folks to do anything other than what they want to do. So what they have to do is convince them that it's what they should want to do. And I don't know that a verdict in Brian Flores' lawsuit is going to matter. How big that verdict is, it gets divided by 32.
Sure. And
it becomes a lot smaller than it otherwise would have been.
No, it's just bad PR. The money's not going to concern them. And, even with Brian Flores and that conversation right there, it's an incredible risk that he's taking. There's no doubt about it. It's a brave stance he's taking. At the same time, people go, well, is it a career suicide? I go, you know what? I think he's good enough coach, and there's so much light shined on this subject. I do think somebody's going to give him a shot to be a head coach again. I do. It might happen this year with the Texans.
I hope so.
He's certainly deserving of it. But Mike, I think the point you make is where I keep going back to it. You kind of hit on it. Yeah, it's 32 owners. Almost all of them are white. As you filter up through organizations and get, all right, the players, it's over 70% African American. But now you get into coaches and the front office and then to ownership groups. It gets more and more white as we go. And that, to me, is really the issue. And I like your idea about the corporate structure, because I think it will bring, break up some of this. Again, I'm not trying to be racist or judge here, just the deep-rooted whiteness that's within the NFL. That's just, listen, that's the way it is. I don't know any other way to say it. We'd see it this year. Who did the Bears hire to help them get the head coaching job? Oh, Bill Polian, who's an old white man who's been around for a long time. I'm not judging him or that, but I'm just telling you that's an example, again, of where it goes wrong. So it's white owner. Oh, wait, here's old white man that I trust for a long time and have known him, and Bill Polian. Oh, old white man. And again, I'm not judging Bill Polian. I'm just giving examples here. He's going to go to his people that he trusts, right? And, hey, he's shown diversity with hiring Dungy and being a
Jim
part
Caldwell
of that.
as well.
But still, even with a guy like that, he's still, a lot of his tentacles that reach out are white. And that's where there's an issue there. And that's going to be the problem the NFL has to kind of figure out where they go with this.
And I think part of it, too, is because there's 32 teams, you can say to one owner, look, there's an issue and someone needs to show progress here. And the owner will say, okay, I get it, I understand. But this is the guy I want to hire. Somebody else can be the one who shows progress, because this is the coach I really want to hire.
Yeah.
And individually, they'll say there's no racist motivation here. There's no. But the problem is, and the example I used all last week, if you flip a coin 500 times and it comes up heads 490 times, there's something wrong with the coin.
Yeah.
And these numbers are undeniable. There's something wrong. And the problem is the league office can only do so much to encourage teams to do the right thing. And everything they've done is evidence of the problem. Rooney Rule, evidence of the problem.
Sure.
The incentive that they're giving teams whose assistant coaches and front office employees who get hired to bigger jobs, they get draft pick compensation. It underscores the fact that there's a problem. This problem has been hiding in plain sight. Kudos to Brian Flores for being the one to be willing to potentially trade his career for it. I don't know what's going to happen with his career, but he came to the table and he put his chips in the middle of the table, and he may never coach again in the NFL.
He had enough. And
he may never coach again in the NFL.
The Giants, so there's the conversations they had with Bill Belichick. He knew all about it. Again, that is the problem there. That is really just, you're right. The NFL admits there's a problem. They know it. That's where, to me, like the original comment to go like that's totally off base. I was like, whoa, that's insensitive by the NFL. The one you are
no, without merit.
Without merit.
Without merit.
Like that. I was like, what? Without merit? You've been telling me this is a merit situation for the last 4 years, and now it's without merit. So that made no sense. But then there's certain optics too that don't look right, Mike. And again, I'm not judging here. I'm just showing examples. But I do have a hard time thinking, wait. If Eric Bieniemy was white and had led one of the top 5 offenses in football 4 years in a row, would he not be hired by now? Byron Leftwich, what he's doing. And then I sit there and I go, and again, not to say this person isn't deserving, but I go, and then here's Kevin O'Connell, about to be the head coach of your Minnesota Vikings. Not even really a full-time offensive coordinator, because we know McVay's going to do that. He's going to be a head coach before Bieniemy, who has been coaching the best offense in football for the last 2 years, or Byron Leftwich, who's been as good as anybody in the game the last 2 years on that side of the ball. Those optics don't look right. And I think anybody with a realistic mind can agree with that. That does not look right.
The problem with Leftwich, it sure seems like he made a power play.
It does seem
to get rid of Trent Baalke and bring in Adrian Wilson. And it just didn't work. It didn't work. Shad Khan ultimately decided to stick with Baalke, bring in Doug Peterson as the head coach. There's been a lot of talk that Rick Spielman's going to be hired in some sort of executive VP role, and on Shad Khan goes without Byron Leftwich. And as to Eric Bieniemy, he's getting a shot with the Saints. I think it's going to be hard for him to get the Saints job, because I believe there's a strong amount of momentum pointing toward Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator. Mickey Loomis, the GM, is getting toward the end of his career. He doesn't want a whole new coaching staff there.
Aaron Glenn, I've heard, is a real serious candidate there as well.
If you keep Dennis Allen, though, you keep everything else in place.
Everything else, right?
And there's something to be said for that. But will they, the Saints, decide we're going to go in a different direction? We're going to do something different. And we're going to be a beacon of the kind of progress that has been elusive for the NFL.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.